That feeling got me out of a 7-Eleven right before it was robbed. The vibes were off, but I was a tired student, just wanted to get a snack before another all-night cramming session. But as I was standing there, the feeling got stronger that I needed to leave now. Right after I left, the two guys that were in there with me robbed the place. Car full of naive young teenagers on a road trip. My friend, driving, decided to do a lazy 3-point turn on a corner on a winding road in the forest. He had fully blocked the road halfway through the turn, and I piped up from the back seat, "Hurry it up, mate. A couple of motorbikes might come screaming around the corner." Just as he got the car back in its lane, a couple of motorbikes came screaming around the corner.
This is Dead Air, and stories of moments when a gut instinct might just have saved someone's life. Listen with the lights off.
I was sitting in my car after high school one day and feeling like I needed to stop texting and leave. Then I started seeing people running down the street towards me, 3 or 4 people on each side of the street. I bug out and drive like 5 blocks away to call 911, and then I can see that they have guns and are threatening shooting each other. So then I drive off a second time and don't stop, but I almost got caught in crossfire twice in 5 minutes. My sister, my husband, and I were planning to wash the cars in the driveway one summer day, and they wanted to do it right away. I insisted we go eat lunch. I said it just made more sense, and both of them fought me. I insisted and said we had to do it this way. I just was not letting go. So we went inside to eat. I was warming up a pepperoni hot pocket in the microwave when from outside we heard the loudest boom and ran to the door. An old man in a Crown Vic had plowed through our driveway, hit both cars, and totaled himself on the tree in the middle of the yard. He had low blood sugar and passed out and hit the gas. I am 100% certain that we would have been dead if we were out there. My husband's brand new G6 was totaled, and my Sunfire's back end was toast. The tree had to come down. It was one of the scariest things I have ever seen. My father was working in construction as a contractor, leading a team who were working on an old estate on a hillside. It was a clear day. The weather was fine, and they were up there on the scaffolding working on the chimney. Rather suddenly, my father experiences this pressure to go down, right now. It's a hassle. You have to climb down the scaffolding. They hadn't been up there all that long, so he resisted the feeling for a bit. But it was just this tremendous push, this urging to descend ASAP. So he told the team to go down. They asked why. They didn't understand. They were in the swing of things. Why go down? My father finally just ordered them down. So they went, and a few minutes later they all stood on the lawn, looking at one another sheepishly. At that moment, completely unexpectedly, a lightning strike hit the chimney they'd been working on.
It was the Woolsey fire in 2018. I evacuated our family at 7:45 p.m. amidst heavy smoke and wind. The official evacuation order came at 2 a.m., by which time the fire was everywhere. The power was out and the roads were gridlocked. I live near a big forest, thousands of square miles. I stopped at a rec area to pee, was doing the deed, and realized I hear nothing. Complete and utter silence. If you grew up near any wild animals, you should know silence is a very bad thing. It means there's a predator nearby. Got back in my car quick and started driving away. In the rearview mirror, there's a bear. If I hadn't cut midstream, I'd probably be cut midstream. A few seconds longer, I'd probably be dead. I went to a house party in college with a group of 5 other friends. It was hosted in a lofted apartment, and the whole drive there I kept saying we shouldn't go because I just had this horrible gut feeling something bad was going to happen. An hour after arriving, mid-beer pong game, there was a loud cracking noise and the floor gave out, similar to the way the Titanic split in half. Myself and the group I went with all fell 12 feet to the concrete floor below, along with the folding table and a bunch of glass bottles. The only people hurt? Myself and 2 of my friends. I remember looking up once I hit the floor and seeing the refrigerator about 2 feet from falling down on top of me. I think I said I told you so for the rest of the year. Me and a friend was out walking his dog late at night when a random guy came up to us. Something was way off about him. My entire body prepared itself for a fight or flight out of instinct. He asked for a cigarette and tried to move closer. I told him we had none and to go away, holding my arm out to keep him away. Told my friend we were going home now, and we quickly started heading back. 10 minutes later, as we approached my home, my friend's dog reacted to something, and I looked behind me just in time to see the guy charging at us with a huge knife. I only just managed to block his attack, or my friend would have got a knife in the neck. We survived that encounter with bruises and a few cuts, although my friend nearly lost a finger. The police had to take the assailant in the ambulance first, as we had punched his face in and he was nearly blinded. This happened over a year ago, and I still wake up every night drenched in sweat. I still can't be around strangers.
I remember leaving class in college 2010. There was this girl who I was becoming friends with because we lived fairly close together and took the same back roads at night. One day I was following her on the winding crossroads back home, but something inside me was like, stop at the grocery store, now. So I did. After leaving the store, I saw an accident on the freeway and avoided it. Then, later that night, a friend let me know on Facebook that my friend got into a car accident and died. Turns out, she was directly in front of me for the entire ride home, and when she was merging onto the freeway, she was crushed by a semi. If I didn't stop at the store, I would have been right behind her on the freeway, and who knows if I would have avoided the accident or been caught up in it. It was a very sad few weeks. In my early 20s, first car, my friend and I went to a house party held by people we knew. The party was great, high vibes, and everyone was having a great time. Out of nowhere, I was overcome with a feeling of absolute dread, like a sense of impending doom that was impossible to ignore. I told my friend that it was time to go, now. He looked me in the eyes and didn't hesitate. He said, "Okay, let's go." We both got in our cars and drove away, and when we rounded the corner out of the street, we spotted about 15 cars all parked up on the side of the road. Turns out, a local gang who were notorious for crashing parties and literally kidnapping people and torturing them, bashing girls as they held down their boyfriends, all sorts of terrible shit like that. This gang had found out about the party and were waiting down the street to raid it. After we left, we heard that the gang had crashed the party, bashed as many guys and girls as they could, kidnapped a couple of people, and even ran over a partygoer as they drove away. It was a powerful lesson at a young age to trust those gut feelings.
A few years ago, 4 of us tumbled into a city centre bar for a few drinks after a gig. I felt something seemed off. It was a karaoke night and 2 of us put their names down to sing a duet. I had a bad feeling about the place and persuaded the others to leave and not wait their turn, reluctantly, because they really wanted to sing. Eventually we left. Later that night, there was a shooting in the bar. In college, I had a bad day, so that night I rode my motorcycle to the top of a local mountain to go chill and think a bit. I get to the top, get off my bike and start walking towards the scenic overlook. As I do, something tells me to head back. Instead of ignoring that as a passing thought, I listen to it. I get to my bike, turn the lights on, and when I do, I see a mountain lion walking away from me. It was about 30 yards away and was where I had been standing just moments before. This was a while ago now, and I can still see that black-tipped tail walking away from me to this day. What still frightens me about that experience is if it was walking away from me, it must have been walking towards me at some point. I sometimes wonder if I had taken my helmet off at that point, if things would have been different. I wonder, had the cat saw the helmet and didn't know what to think? Anyway, no idea why I thought to turn back. I didn't hear a sound or see anything that I can remember. It was just like, I should head back. There wasn't fear or anything like that to explain it. I'm from New Orleans. My ex-wife was from rural Missouri. We were on a road trip and got dangerously low on gas. We pulled into a gas station and I told her, stay in the car, keep the windows up, lock the doors, don't even make eye contact with anyone. I pump the gas and go inside to grab a bottle of water. Come out and she has her window completely down, talking to some dude who was asking for directions, while another guy is creeping around to the driver's side. I hollered, "What's up, guys?" They make some excuses and they both just wandered off. To this day, she refuses to believe that she came very, very close to getting carjacked.
It was just before Christmas, and me and my then boyfriend, who is now my husband, had gone back to my hometown to visit our family. We'd gone out for some drinks, that's us, my mum and my sister, and we bumped into some woman who lived on my mum's street. She insisted on inviting us to the after party after the pub closed. Mum got super excited and wanted to go. Sister said no and went to bed, but we were both forced or maybe guilt-tripped into going because Mum didn't want to go alone. So we got there, and going through the front door, I immediately beeline to the back of the house, which is the kitchen, and just have this pit of my stomach feeling to scope out how I'm going to get outside again. There's a set of keys next to the fruit bowl, and one of them fits in the back door. I'm saying over and over that I don't want to be here. I want to go home. Mum is telling me to mingle and relax and have fun and not ruin this for her. And husband is starting to pick up on what I'm feeling and wants to go too. Mum has just made us all drinks and is starting to head back towards the living room when we hear the front door slam open, a guy shouting and demanding payment for drugs, and everyone else starts shouting, swearing, and screaming. Needless to say, I was straight out the back door, followed by my husband and Mom. We were there for about 30 minutes in total, and it wasn't until we got back to safety that I felt like I could breathe again.
I was in the car with my mom on the way to preschool. It was the 80s, so at 4 I wasn't in a car seat or anything. I was sitting on the passenger side of the car in the back seat. We were at a light and I decided to move to the middle seat. Took off my seatbelt, moved and rebuckled myself in the middle. Once the light turned green, we were turning left. The passenger side of our car was hit by a tractor trailer turning the other way. The door was messed up and the side was fairly crushed. If I was still sitting there, I would have been injured.
When I was a kid, my mom fell into a marriage with an abusive man. He never laid a finger on her while they dated, but he beat the shit out of her on their wedding night. We'll call him George. We had moved halfway across the country with him, and he made a lot of money, so my mom didn't need to work, which meant we were properly trapped. She didn't have access to his money. All we had was her car. I was about 8 years old at this time. One day, while he was at work, we packed up the car and left him behind, driving back across the country to the city we were in before. When we got back into town, we checked into our hotel and went to sleep. Sometime the next day, we went to my mom's favourite hangout restaurant bar spot. My brother, who was 17 at the time, we'll call him Matthew, was a bit psychic, and we were just hanging out, having a good time, when he suddenly knew that George was nearby. He grabbed my mom's arm and said, "We have to go. Now." Mom didn't want to go. She thought Matthew was just scared. He basically had to drag her out of there. We got in the car, and as we were sitting at the exit of the parking lot waiting for traffic to pass so we could pull out, George pulled in. Terrifying. It was the spring of 1998, and I, then a 15-year-old girl, was a high school sophomore. I had an argument with my mother late in the evening and decided to leave the house to take a walk around town to clear my head after that. I walked from my suburban neighbourhood about 2 miles to downtown and looped around to walk home again. It was around midnight on my way back, and about a half-mile from home when I noticed a blue pickup truck pass me slowly a few times along a main street with no other cars around. Once I realised it was the same vehicle after the third time passing me, the primal fear set in. Maybe the driver was lost? No. I felt my heart racing. My body went numb. When the truck passed me a fourth time, it didn't stop, but I could tell whoever was driving it was definitely scoping me out. It drove off again, but I heard it turn around once more over the crest of the hill I was walking up. I ran for my life behind a building on the main street and into a neighbourhood where I chose to trespass into residential property to avoid this person in the truck who was following me. I heard the truck drive by with the engine roaring, accelerating down this small residential street as I hid in the bushes of someone's yard, terrified. The truck began scouting this neighbourhood. When it turned onto another street away from me, I ran down the block further towards home until I was safe, but shaken by the experience. A little over a year later, a man named Rex Krebs was arrested and charged with the abduction, rape, and murders of 2 young women from the same part of town where I had my experience of being followed. One of the abduction locations was on a pedestrian bridge about 4 blocks from where I hid in the bushes while being followed. The newspaper ran a huge story on the case and included in the article some photos. The killer's pickup truck that he used to abduct his 2 victims, it was the same truck that was following me that night. Back in college, A group of friends and I were working on our spring carnival. The night before the first day opening, we had the job of setting up several spaces and worked until like 2 a.m, putting together booths and tables and whatnot. It was crazy cold that night for the area of the country we were in. No snow on the ground, but icy and teeth-chatteringly cold. We were done with our work and just about the only people still there at the fairground when one friend was like, "Come in here and warm up," through the flap of a mostly sealed food tent. I went in and found a group of us, drinking beer stretched out on the tops of tables, surrounded by gas grills that had all been turned on full blast to warm the little tent up. A couple of my friends were practically passed out. We'd been working hard. They had had a couple of beers and it was so nice and warm in the tent. After only a few minutes, I too was feeling super tired and a little woozy and stretched out on a table. The tent got very quiet and I rolled over to tell a friend that we probably shouldn't fall asleep in here, and that's when I saw it. The air was wavy like a mirage in the desert, and there were 6 or 7 of us laid out straight on tabletops with arms at our sides like bodies on morgue slabs. All I could say was, "The gas! Get out!" over and over as I struggled to open up the tent flaps. Once the cold outside air rushed into the tent, a couple of the others sat up, realizing what was happening. We all stumbled out of the tent. The 2 who had been in there the longest ended up going to the hospital, while me and the others just had varying degrees of nausea, headaches, and vomiting. I don't think college me really put it together in the moment that we had built ourselves a carbon monoxide gas chamber. But when I looked around and saw us all stretched out on tables like that, there was a very calm voice in my head that said, "This is how they'll find our bodies." And it freaked me the fuck out.
I was 5, and my babysitter's husband came home while I was still there. He weirded me out so badly. It was only a few minutes, but my God, I was terrified. He didn't do anything to me that I remember, and my mom arrived very soon after that to pick me up. I told her he made me feel weird, and she never had the wife watch me again. Years later, he was convicted of possession and distribution of CP. I think there was more than that, but that's what they got him on. I'm from a very religious family, and his dad and mom were both ministers in our church, and our families had been friends for years. I had no quantifiable reasons to not trust him, other than my gut.
I was walking on what's normally a busy street at like 2 or 3 a.m. with a couple of friends while it was seemingly empty. Then I got this really weird feeling of we should cross the street, which was odd because no one was around. But my friends didn't argue because we would have had to later on anyways. Well, not even 10 seconds later, a drunk driver comes speeding and barreling through exactly where we just were, crashing through the fence line and impacting into a tree. When my husband and I were teenagers and first dating, we were parked in an empty golf course for some privacy. We had been to the spot before, and it was a great place to walk around at night and then make out in the car. But tonight was different. As soon as we pulled in, something felt wrong. I reclined my chair back to hide myself, paranoid that someone was watching us. We sat for a few moments, making awkward small talk. I was suddenly filled with overwhelming dread and sheepishly asked if we could leave. My then boyfriend immediately obliged, a little too quickly considering the hormones of teenage boys and the plans we had to fool around. He peeled out of the parking lot, my seat still fully reclined because at this point I'm absolutely convinced we aren't alone. The bottom of the Honda scraped the ditch of the driveway as we pulled out in a panic. At this point, neither of us had communicated with one another what we were feeling, but his reaction was enough to know we were on the same page. We were in danger. We sped a few miles away before we broke the silence, and I put my seat back in its upright position. I tried to laugh it off and admitted I wasn't sure why I was scared. Neither of us really had an explanation for the sudden fear we both experienced, but decided not to question it too much. We found out after the fact there was a brutal attack on a couple of teens walking home from the burger joint by the golf course by a schizophrenic homeless man. I'm convinced we both felt like someone was watching us, because he was. And I know if we had gone on our normal late night walk, something horrible would have happened. This happened almost 16 years ago, but I can still remember that fear so vividly. I was sitting in the library across the road from my apartment when my flatmates called me saying, "That's not you in your room, is it? There's someone else here. They're walking around your room. We're screaming at them to leave from our bedroom, but we're too scared to open our door." I sprinted across the road, but he had left by the time I got there. Turns out he was spooked by the screaming, but got into the next apartment along and attacked a woman on her bed. We were 3 19-year-old girls and very lucky. Got an angry lecture from the police for not locking our front door. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my younger sister was about 6 or 7, we spent our summers at a campground where we had our trailer on a seasonal lot. It was a pretty safe spot with lots of kids and lots of parents or retired adults nearby that would look out for those kids. We didn't have cell phones, and there was no self-service at the campground anyway, but we weren't concerned when our parents went 15 minutes or so up the highway to go fishing and left us kids more or less unattended. My sister and I were walking back to our campsite, which was near the back of the loop. It was a round dirt road with campers and tents on either side, as well as in the middle. We were about to take the short way through the loop when I saw an older man watching us through the campers and trees on the other side. I quietly told my sister not to panic, don't look at him, but we're going to take the long way around the full loop to see if he was trying to follow us. Well, the guy switched directions and started heading down the loop where we'd crossed paths. So we cut through a campsite where an older man and his wife were out having a fire. We didn't know them, but we said hello and carried on towards the back of the loop. The guy following us stood and talked to the man at the fire, all while watching us walk around the loop. We decided not to go back to our own camper since our parents weren't there, so we took another couple of detours and went into another girl's camper. Her family wasn't around that weekend, but they left their camper unlocked, so we snuck in and locked the door. Since this camper had a good view of the whole loop, we stayed until long after we watched the guy walk away when he realized he couldn't find us. We don't really know what he wanted or why he was following us, but he wasn't subtle about it, and we didn't really leave the camper until my parents came back in their car. We didn't tell them what happened either. Oops. It was scary as an 8-year-old trying to be cool and calm for a younger sister and not piss off the guy following us through the trees. My fiancé and I were outside on a warm summer night, standing behind a cabin, watching the most amazing electrical storm I had ever seen. At the back of the cabin was a large cornfield, so our view was unobstructed. Where we were was completely peaceful, with just a slight breeze, no rain, no thunder. It was so mesmerizing that other people came to join us watching the event. Every second there were just multiple lightning strikes over a large area. During this spectacular show of nature, I felt the hair on my body raise. I turned to my fiancée to tell her we needed to leave now when lightning struck a tree very close by. The thunder cracked and brought with it very strong wind that immediately started bending all the trees violently. I yelled for everyone to get into the cabin as lightning again struck close by, cracking the air again. We all ran inside as the rain began to blow almost horizontal. When we opened the door to the cabin, the wind rushed in, and all the windows that had just the screens in allowed a current of air to flow through and blew out the shutters. As we all entered the room, another crack of thunder proceeded, and the lights went out. We huddled in the room while the wind, rain, and thunder continued to hammer the cabin and trees. Once the storm finally subsided, we went outside to survey the damage. Trees had been ripped out of the ground all over the place. Roads were blocked. Power was out everywhere due to downed lines. One cabin had a tree fall onto it, but the person who was supposed to be in there had been with us in our cabin. When I was a kid, I was the oldest of the neighborhood gang. We were aged 6 to 9. We girls were all riding our bikes, and this young man in his 20s was stopped down the street, apparently fixing his bike. He chatted us up, and immediately something struck me as odd about how he spoke to us. He was definitely trying to charm his way into trust. I told the girls we should go, so we continued on. After a few minutes, someone noticed that the youngest of us was gone. I broke out in a sweat that made me feel like I was gonna puke. We took off back the opposite way to look for her. Her sister flew like the wind to tell their mom, who was as tough as nails. She was from Scotland. We finally caught the guy and the 6-year-old riding bikes far out of the neighborhood, away, clearly leaving. As soon as we saw him, their mom came flying down the road in her car like a pissed-off hornet. Long story short, he thought he'd casually leave the area, no harm done. Nope. He's lucky that the police showed up when they did, because that little girl's mother nearly ran him over with her car and basically cornered him up against a fence until the cops arrested him. He was a convicted child assaulter. He had told our 6-year-old friend that his dog was missing and he needed help. I remember my mother explaining to me what a child assaulter was. That was kind of a defining point in my childhood. At a house party, 2 guys started fighting. It got broken up once one was clearly losing, but both were still yelling and somewhat trying to get past the people that separated them. Suddenly, the guy who lost the fight went blank, just a dead look in his eyes, no more yelling or aggression. He just calmly walked out the front door, but from the look in his eyes, my gut told me, "Get out now." I grabbed my girlfriend and we left. About 5 minutes later, he showed back up to the party with a gun and killed the guy he was fighting. 2 other people got hit by bullets in the chaos.
This was 4 years ago, right after COVID. Went to a well-known Cancun all-inclusive resort on vacation. It was super early morning, just past dawn. Had the infinity pool to myself and took advantage. Wandered to the infinity edge, which looked out over the beach and ocean. I'm there at the edge enjoying the view when motion below me caught my eye. 2 guys were below me, behind the hotel sign digging in the sand. They pulled up a box, a little bigger than a shoebox. Something told me not to move, but also not to look. I shifted my gaze, feeling oddly both calm and terrified, so that I was looking at the horizon, like I hadn't even noticed them. My peripheral vision confirmed they stopped digging and were looking up at me. Nobody moved for a few minutes. Then they went back to their work. I slowly glided backward away from the edge, then out of the pool and swiftly back to our room. Later that morning, as drinks and loud music got into full swing, 3 police officers came and were investigating the spot that they had been digging. I am positive my ability to look like I was just a dumb tourist enjoying the view kept me from becoming of concern to them. May of this year, myself and my best friend went to Spain for my 28th birthday. We stayed in Lloret de Mar, but decided to spend my actual birthday walking around Barcelona. It got to around 7:30 p.m. and we got to the bus station to go back from Barcelona to Lloret. Only problem is the clerk was adamant there were no more buses or coaches going to Lloret that evening, and we would have to get a bus to the next town over and then get a bus from there to Lloret. Bit of a hassle, but it beats sleeping in the bus station. We go outside and we are waiting for our bus to the next city for around 20 minutes until we see a bus go past us clearly labelled as going to Lloret de Mar. Me and my friend are confused, but we already had a ticket to the neighbouring town, so we just waited for our bus to show up. I'd looked online and found that the bus we needed to get from the next town was at 9 p.m. That was the last bus to Lloret, so we had to make it. We get to the bus stop, and we were both struggling to understand the timetable. My phone was on 2% and my friend's was on 19% or so, but I could see 2100 on the board, so I was pretty sure the last bus was due at 9 p.m. We saw a man walking up the street with a big hiking backpack on and asked if he was Spanish. He said yes, and we asked if he could tell us when the next bus was. He read the board for about a minute and a half, which I thought was odd, as clearly he could understand the timetable better than me or my friend could. This guy then tells us there are no more buses coming tonight going to Lloret, which again I'd seen online and on this board that it was due at 9 p.m. I thought maybe I had read it wrong after all. The man said that he could book a taxi for us or we could get a lift with him. Now obviously 2 young women are not stupid enough to accept this man's offer to chauffeur us home, but it was extra suspicious because, as I mentioned, he walked up the street and had a huge hiking backpack on. Didn't seem like he was out via car, if that makes sense. We ask if he can book us a taxi. He gets on the phone and it seems to be a pretty long call just to book a taxi. That's when he said 2 words and my heart dropped into my stomach. Inglesas chicas. Why would the taxi man need to know that we were English girls? The guy then gets off the phone and tells us that the taxi that will arrive will be silver. I said, "How do you know that?" He stumbled over his words a little and then said, "Most Spanish taxis are silver. I just knew this did not sound right." We waited at the bus stop and thought about what we would do if this car shows up, because we were definitely not getting in it. 9 p.m. rolls around and the bus to Lloret de Mar shows up. We jump on that bus and go back to the hotel. I dread to think what could have happened if we had got in that taxi. The one I can't explain was when I was riding my bike to the shops for food and some beers while on vacation. The weather was pretty bad, but still rideable. On the way there, nothing felt off other than me being wet as hell and the bike not liking the wet. On the way back, I got a crazy urge to just whack open the throttle and get it over with. Not something I'd usually do in the dark and rain on roads I don't know, but honestly, going 15 over the speed limit felt too slow,
2 days later, the weather cleared up. I rode the same road, and there was a 10-kilometer stretch that had fully flooded. Trees were uprooted, and there was trash in the branches at a height of 2 to 3 meters. I'm not from a place with flash floods at all, and this area had never been prone to them before. I'm guessing the preceding drought dried up the ground, and instead of seeping in, the water washed away a natural dam. What I don't get is how I felt it coming while cold, sleep-deprived, and on top of a very vibrant motorcycle.
Nearly got kidnapped with 3 other girls when we were all about 14 years old, early 2012. Long story short, my close middle school friend group were holding yet another sleepover at one of our houses. Around midnight, we decided to sneak out to mess around in a neighborhood park about a 3-minute walk away. Right after we got there, a pickup truck pulled up and parked in a spot just in front of where we were standing. Its high beams were on at full brightness, making it impossible to see through the windows. At first I thought nothing of it, since there was a line of mailboxes right beside the park. They were just getting the mail, right? After a few minutes, they still hadn't gotten out of the truck. My hair stood on end. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it and have fun, another minute passed, and I asked my friends to leave, even though we had just got there. They pushed back a few times, but then noticed just how serious I was being. We all agreed to count to 3 and run back to my friend's house. As soon as we took off, the truck backed out of the lot and followed us. The only reason I think we made it out alive is because my friend's neighborhood had a strange layout. The street she lived on ended with a cul-de-sac that backed up to a road, but they didn't connect. There were big chunks of limestone placed throughout the area to ensure that no car could drive over that spot, even if someone wanted to. I don't know why that area wasn't developed, but it probably saved our skins, because we could use that spot as a shortcut, but the truck had to drive around several blocks to get to her street. We huffed and puffed as we ran back to her house. I and another friend trailed slightly behind the other 2 girls because we were out of shape. The girl whose house we were staying at was at the front. We were only halfway home when we heard the truck's engine roaring through the nearby streets. My 2 faster friends reached the driveway and frantically punched in the garage door code. Light flooded into the black night as the door slowly lifted. We were still about 2 houses down, and they both screamed for us to run faster. That's when I glanced back over my shoulder. I looked just in time to see the truck make a sharp turn and barrel down the dimly lit street with no lights on. Not just no high beams. The truck was completely dark. The driver knew the neighborhood well enough to navigate to my friend's street without headlights. For context, my mum would get lost driving through her neighborhood in broad daylight, even after going there countless times. It was not an obvious route. Me and my friend darted into the garage just as the truck sped by the house, headlights still off. The garage slowly drew shut. We locked the deadbolt and then made a beeline to my friend's bedroom. We collapsed on the carpet, hyperventilating and sobbing as we realized what had just happened. A heavy, sick feeling sunk into my gut, and I nearly barfed. We didn't tell anyone because we were worried we might not be allowed to have sleepovers again, which in hindsight was a dumbass decision.
But we were stupid kids. If I didn't listen to my gut, and if her neighborhood wasn't built so strangely, who knows what would have happened to the four of us. One of the girls who was there almost got kidnapped again in her own neighborhood just a few months later. These were both nice, middle-class neighborhoods that everyone assumed were safe. They were not. I still avoid going out in the dark whenever I can. Trust your gut, folks.
You've been listening to Dead Air. Like and subscribe for more. Good night.